Welcome to episode 2 of our series, and of course it is called A Path to Smoke Free, and we're talking about some fantastic things that we can actually implement as far as innovation is concerned. And we're jumping into a very controversial subject of nicotine and tobacco. Not many people out there are willing to even talk about it openly. Not many people out there willing to basically discuss how innovation can actually change the path to smoke free, and that's exactly what we're doing with, of course, our distinguished guest on the series is Federico Fernández, the CEO of We Are Innovation. Federico, welcome back to the series, as we're going to now jump into something controversial. Something that not many people obviously want to talk about, not many people actually want to discuss. And that's what we want to basically jump straight with you as the first question. How did you come to get involved in the tobacco and nicotine policy space, Federico?
Yes, happy to discuss about this. Just one thing, and please thank you for the question. And the question was very clear, but just one thing I want to make clear from the very beginning. Let's say none of our work has anything to do with smoking in the sense of cigarettes, combustible cigarettes. This is nothing of what we are doing in this space has to do with that. Just because sometimes the phrase tobacco can be misleading. So just as I wanted to clarify that. Shaq, as I said before, we are innovation is a network in favor of innovation. We want to and we like to focus on topics that are innovative, but also have a very clear and, let's say, very defined effect on individuals' lives, on human lives. Many of the topics that we deal with are innovations that you could find, let's say, on your cell phone. That things that are part of your daily lives, of your daily life, and that you really feel they have made an improvement. Smoking is a big problem all over the world. There are parts of the world that are worse than others, but in general, we tend to think wrongly, unfortunately, that smoking has been defeated. No, smoking has not been defeated. The European Union, for instance, a place that really many people think that people don't smoke anymore. 24% of people still within the European Union smoke, with countries that rate is more than 35%, close to 40%. So there is a lot of good work still to do regarding smoking. And even though we do not have a prohibitionist view regarding smoking, we think adults need to have the freedom to smoke if they choose to do so. We all know that smoking is not the best you can do. Smoking in general affects your health. In most cases, if people have smoked for a long period during their lives, they will most likely live a little bit less. They will live shorter than they could have had they not smoked. So what we saw for a long time was that there have been a lot of measures to try to curb smoking, taxes, regulations, make smoking in public more difficult or even completely impossible, education campaigns, and they have had an impact. But also you can see, and Europe is a great example of this, that these measures tend to reach a point, like a ceiling, that they cannot break. And we've witnessed many countries in which smoking prevalence declined, but then that decline plateaued, and basically it became like a line like this, or a line that goes low, very, very mildly, very slowly. And like in many other parts of our lives, we think, hey, innovation may have a solution here as well. And indeed, it has been offering a lot of solutions in order to help smokers switch to safer products. And this started, I mean, some of these innovations, let's say, are not that new because, for instance, vaping is almost 20 years old. We have something that was invented in Sweden many, many years ago, which is called snus, which is some sort of oral tobacco. And now we have also heated tobacco and we have nicotine pouches. And in a nutshell, what we've seen are two things. Firstly, that the scientific research regarding these products shows, I would say by now, unequivocally, that these products are way less risky than smoking. For instance, just to give you just one stat, according to Public Health England, vaping is at least 95% less risky than smoking, at least 95%. Nicotine pouches, according to a lot of research, are 98% less risky than smoking. So the difference is huge. It's a completely different nature, you could say. And what we also have been tracking and seeing is that countries that embrace or at least allow the presence of these products, let's say in a rational way, and we can talk about this in a minute, what they show is that smoking prevalence declines. So what we are seeing is that innovation has given us products that allow smokers to continue to consume nicotine. Smokers smoke because of the nicotine and they die because of the tar. That's what happens. When you burn a cigarette to consume the nicotine, unfortunately, a lot of very toxic substances go into your lungs and into your body. Your lungs deteriorate, that in turn deteriorates your coronary system, and that creates a lot of problems. What we see is, thanks to innovation, we can allow people who currently smoke to switch to way better alternatives, safer alternatives that will allow them to consume nicotine without the problems of combustion. And this is exactly the same as innovation has operated in many other areas of our life. And this is not a new thing. This is not something that we should be surprised. In general, what we witness is that when we embrace innovation, innovation brings us better solutions. And this is just another example. Unfortunately, and with this I finish, sorry for the long response, as you prefaced during your question, this topic is a lot more polemic and controversial than it should be.
Well, Federico, thank you for that. But in terms of the challenges, as far as innovation and a path to smoke-free, you did mention, of course, the fact that how vaping is clearly and has been categorized as 95% safer than the nicotine and the tar that basically comes into play. But in terms of the challenges, I mean, globally, what are the challenges we actually are seeing to have a path to smoke-free? Or basically a path to smoke-free avenues that can be created through innovation?
Well, we're seeing challenges and opportunities. The challenge is that, unfortunately, many governments around the globe, one of them, by the way, my government so far, Argentina, I am from Argentina originally. In Argentina, for instance, most of innovative nicotine products are literally banned. By the way, this doesn't mean that they are not accessible. It means that they are accessible in an illegal and illicit manner, but that is for, another discussion or maybe later. But what we see is that, let's say, we are seeing a split globally regarding the regulation and the treatment of innovative nicotine products. On the one hand, you have more a more restrictive approach of countries that are basically trying to ban them or have completely banned them or want to make these products obsolete. For instance, lowering the levels of nicotine to levels that a smoker would try them and wouldn't feel anything and would continue smoking because they would be basically obsolete for a smoker who wants to switch. Governments that tend to, unfortunately, given a lot of misinformation that circulates, tend to tell their populations that these products are not only as risky as smoking, but even more risky than smoking, that are riskier than smoking, which really makes no sense. And that what it leads is to, let's say, not solving the problem that you want to solve, because let's say everybody basically wants to make all our countries smoke free. As I said, again, respecting individuals' freedom and respecting individuals' choices, but it's better not to smoke than to smoke. So, if we, let's say, we all would like to be in a situation in which people don't smoke. But the highly restrictive approaches, what they do is they, in general, do not solve the problem of smoking because people continue to smoke. And as we discussed a few minutes earlier, very restrictive and coercive measures alone tend to plateau, tend to hit a ceiling, and tend to really slow down the decline of smoking prevalence. And also you add the problems of prohibition. So innovative nicotine products become part of the black market, become part of cartels and criminal organizations that sell highly risky products that are not tested or proved by anyone, to whoever, by the way. Let's say, no criminal asks a possible customer for an ID to check the age of the person. So, you want to buy, you buy, that's it. So that is the challenging side. But on the other hand, Shaq, and I think this is what eventually will prevail, by the way, we also are seeing several very important countries, very serious countries with very strong institutions that have embraced in their own ways innovative nicotine products, and they are showing spectacular results in the sense that smoking prevalence is plummeting, smoking-related diseases are plummeting, no new diseases are appearing, because you could say, oh, you switch, a poison for a different poison. No, that is not what's going on. By the way, and this is recognized by the World Health Organization itself, nicotine does not provoke cancer. The problem with cigarettes is not nicotine, is combustion and everything related to combustion, not nicotine itself. So let's say there is also a shining city by the hill that really is starting to create, I think, more and more push towards more open, more pro-innovation policies that let innovation play a part in solving the problem of smoking.
So basically, just before we carry on, I just want to also point out the fact that in no way are we sort of promoting smoking, or no way are we promoting any other avenues here, but we're just basically talking about innovation that is available out there for individuals. Just like Federico said, we respect each and everybody's individual freedom out there. They're out there to choose what they want to do, and here we are obviously putting it just out there. And just like you did say, Federico, it is a subject that most governments around the world do not want to talk about. It's something, I'm talking about the solution, I'm talking about the path as far as innovation is concerned, because they know that it's already available, but they also know that there is a flourishing black market or gray market or whatever you want to call it, it's there. They know it's there, but why is it so difficult to accept this, discuss it, have conversations, and come up with regulations that could possibly propel forward than what we're going through right now?
I would say that, I think in most cases, government officials, people who are part of the health ministries, regulators of cigarettes and nicotine products, they all mean well, and they all want to do what is best for their countries, for their populations, and they have a huge responsibility, a huge burden on their shoulders, and I really respect how, let's say, the kind of task that they have to perform. And also in the past, Shaq, there have been, particularly in the 90s, this is a long time ago, but in the 90s, there were, unfortunately, particularly from people from the cigarette industry, there were a lot of lies and a lot of false statements that still, unfortunately, many people remember because you don't like to be lied to your face. And you know that let's say nicotine was not addictive, that cigarettes were basically not a problem to your health and things like that. And that was a complete lie. And now that I think makes public officials even more wary of alternatives because they could be thinking, hey, am I going to be swindled again? Is somebody trying to lie to me? And let's say again, I really sympathize with their position. I really understand the level of responsibility that they have. And sometimes they could be extremely prudent. The good news is that there are many countries already, Sweden, the United Kingdom, Japan in its own way, New Zealand, Canada, the US, that have been using and adopting alternative nicotine products, innovative nicotine products, as part of their strategy to try to end smoking. And what we see is that they are showing a lot of progress. So, and this example will eventually be unavoidable and inevitable, I would say. This wave is not going to be stopped because it's like trying to stop a tsunami with your hand or something like that. This is happening. So what we need to do, and in this regard, I am extremely grateful by your invitation and that we can have this conversation. I think we have to have these conversations like this. We have to try to talk with people, with public officials, and this is part of what we do at We Are Innovation. We publish reports, we do events, we do, let's say, a lot of activities in this area and in others in order to try to have conversations and try to show our point of view, why we think, as in many parts of in many other parts of our lives, in this case also innovation needs to play a role to solve the problem of smoking. So again, I think the best way is to always think that the other, let's say, the people that we're talking to, particularly when they're public officials, when they're government officials, they mean well, and they have a huge responsibility. But again, the good news also is that we can talk to these people and we can show them that there are already a lot of examples that show that innovative nicotine products should be a part of the strategy in order to end smoking.
So Federico, just before we wind up episode 2, do you think path to smoke-free through innovation can actually work in our lifetime? I mean, rather, would path to smoke-free work through innovation rather than prohibition, which is obviously what we are encountering with so many different countries, apart from the ones that you actually mentioned?
It has worked. It has worked. That's a good news, Shaq. This is not theoretical alone. This is not just, hey, maybe if we had, let's say, products that allow you to consume nicotine without combustion, and if they were widely adopted for smokers who switch. No, this has happened. This has happened in Sweden. Sweden is basically the first smoke-free country in the world, for sure the first smoke-free country in Sweden. And how has it done it? Well, Sweden has a three-part strategy. You can think of Sweden of a three-legged, stool or table. On the one hand, Sweden applies the measures that come from the European Union and from the World Health Organization regarding tackling smoking. Sweden has also spent a lot of money, has better said, invested a lot of money in educating their population regarding the dangers of smoking, which is fine. By the way, these first two things that I just described to you, basically every country in the world does, but also Sweden has allowed innovation to play a role in defeating smoking. And Sweden, what shows us is that people born in Sweden, smoking prevalence is 4.5%. That means smoke-free. And this is even more important because you could say, because I am from Argentina, and in Argentina we are experts, and this happens in many countries in the world. We are experts who say, oh, that works for Sweden, but it wouldn't work for us, because it's always, oh, the Swedish are so blonde, or so tall, whatever. They live so far up in the north, but, we are so different. People from the European Union, from completely different countries, cultures, languages, climates, who move to Sweden, their smoking prevalence is 7.8%, while smoking prevalence in the European Union is 24%. So what you can see that in general innovation, like really, you couldn't say that, an iPhone works for an American but doesn't work for an Argentinian because of cultural reasons. Innovation works in general for everybody. And Sweden shows us that it's working. The United Kingdom is also an amazing example that embracing, in the case of the United Kingdom, particularly vaping. In the case of Sweden, it's more nicotine pouches and snus, but all alternative nicotine products are allowed in Sweden. What you see is that this has been the missing piece. Let's say everybody is trying to solve these puzzles, and the problem was that there was a piece that was missing. That was the issue. So they were trying to force different things into create the shape that you want to create, but there was a piece that was missing. And the piece that was missing was innovation. And you see that countries that Sweden, United Kingdom, New Zealand, Japan, Greece, that used to be like the ashtray of Europe, smoking prevalence is declining sharply in Greece. Czech Republic also doing a very clever use of innovative nicotine products. They seem to have found what we needed to defeat smoking. So again, this is not theoretical. We are not talking of a utopia. We are talking of something that is happening. Well, in Sweden has already happened and is happening in many other countries around the globe.
So basically, before we wind up this particular series, and before we get into the third episode of the Path to Smoke Free, the question is, why aren't the rest of the countries in the world using Sweden and their blueprint in terms of following what they're doing? Why is it difficult for everybody else to sort of use it? What is the resistance? How is Sri Lanka going to cope up with all this? That's what we're going to get into in episode 3 of our Path to Smoke Free right here on the podcast series. We'll see you soon.